They made fun of the black bricklayer until he fired the CEO in the very boardroom. The hammer resounded in the large building under construction, drowned out by the laughter of a group of executives hurrying down the hallway. A black-skinned man dressed in a worn bricklayer's uniform and a yellow hard hat remained focused on his work, ignoring the scornful glances he received. His name was Joaquim. To everyone he was just another invisible worker, but no one knew the truth. Joaquim was not just a bricklayer, he was the true owner of that company, and what was about to happen on that construction site would shock the entire world. Joaquim Santos, aged 48, had always believed in the power of hard work and justice. He had founded the construction company Imperial Ingenieria more than 20 years ago, starting with small projects until building a respectable empire. But after a long break to deal with health problems, he returned to the helm of the company only to discover that everything he had built was falling apart. Contracts, manipulated unfair cuts of employees, and a toxic environment had infiltrated the culture he once dreamed of creating. To understand what was really going on, Joaquim decided to return in a way that no one expected. Disguised as a simple bricklayer, no one suspected that the man with calloused hands and simple clothes who cleaned debris and placed bricks was the true founder, and that was how, with attentive eyes and open ears, he began to observe everything that was wrong. On his first day, Joaquim already felt the weight of inequality. While carrying a pile of bricks, he heard muffled laughter behind him. "Look at that engineer over there. Does he know how to carry those bricks well?" mocked one of the executives. Paulo, the director of operations. Joaquim remained silent, but inside he felt anger burning. He was not there to defend himself, yet he did not have to see how far he would go. On his lunch break, Joaquim sat at a table next to other bricklayers. The atmosphere was humble in contrast to the luxury of the exclusive executive dining room on the floor above. "This company is not the same anymore," murmurs Francisco, an older man with decades of experience in the "They treat us like disposable machines." Joaquim nodded but said nothing. He knew that each word was a piece of the puzzle that he needed to put together. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the building under construction, the interim general manager Marcelo Acevedo was toasting with a group of investors. With his impeccable suit and confident smile, he celebrated the budget cuts that would guarantee greater benefits to the shareholders. "We have cut 30% of the basic staff," said Marcelo, raising his glass of wine. "These workers have no idea how easily replaceable they are." The laughter echoed in the room. Joaquim, who worked in the hallway next door, heard everything. He clenched his fists but remained calm. The anger he felt was not for himself but for all the workers who were being treated like disposable objects by men who had never gotten their hands dirty. He knew that the time to act was approaching. That night, Joaquim came home exhausted but determined. He opened a box that contained old company documents, contracts, securities, and above all, the goals of inclusion and respect that he had set from the beginning. "Where has all this gone?" he murmured, feeling a pang of sadness, but he knew he couldn't go on like this. During the following days, Joaquim continued working on the construction site and observing. He saw everything: bosses shouting at the workers, late payment of wages justified with unconvincing excuses, and employees fired for an apparent reason. Each injustice was like a blow but also a reminder of why he was there. And then he saw the perfect opportunity to act. One day while he was loading cement, they asked Joaquim to clean the management meeting room. Marcelo and the other directors were there discussing how to reduce costs with more layoffs. "These bricklayers complain too much," one of them said. "If they don't like it, they should look for another job." Joaquim continued cleaning as if he hadn't heard anything, but he recorded each word in his mind. Joaquim left the meeting room with a firm step, trying to contain the rage that burned in his chest. He knew that each word he heard there would be crucial for what would come next. The lack of respect and arrogance of the executives had crossed all limits. However, he was not a man to act impulsively. Joaquim had a plan, one that would expose all the rottenness of that management and show who he really was. The next morning, Joaquim arrived early at the construction site. The day started like any other, with exhausted workers carrying materials and facing the disdainful glances of the supervisors. He found Francisco, the oldest bricklayer, in a corner trying to adjust his worn tool. "Needed Ida's help?" asked Joaquim, crouching down beside him. Francisco let out a tired sigh. "You know, Joaquim, sometimes I wonder why I'm still here. I've been working for this company for 20 years and they don't care if I drop dead in the middle of a construction site. All they want is profit." "Your pal." They cut Joaquim like a knife. He knew that Francisco was right. When he founded the company, his idea was to create a decent work environment where everyone felt valued, but what he found when he returned was a place where human beings were treated like numbers. "Things will change, Francisco, trust me," answered Joaquim in a tone of silent promise. While Joaquim worked, he observed more than ever. He saw the dynamics between the workers and the executives. He heard the whispers of dissatisfaction in the hallways and felt the weight of the lack of respect that hung in the air. All of this reinforced his decision to act. He was about to turn the tables. During the lunch break, Joaquim met Rosa, the young woman who served the workers in the small improvised dining room. "Rosa, how are you? You seem worried," she asked him, seeing the tired expression on his face. I am Joaquim. I heard they are going to fire more people, as if it wasn't hard enough to keep track of the accounts, answered Rosa while serving a plate of rice and beans to a day laborer. Those up above have no idea what we go through down here, Rosa. You deserve better, you all deserve more, and you will understand very soon, said Joaquim with a slight smile, leaving a touch of mystery in his words. That same afternoon, while Joaquim was sweeping the floor near Marcelo's office, the interim general manager heard another conversation that made him clench his fists. If we could fire another 15% of the construction site staff, we would save a fortune, said Marcelo while laughing with another executive. These bricklayers think they are worth something. They could be replaced at any moment. Joaquim took a deep breath. He had enough evidence. It was time to act. The next morning, while the executives were preparing for another meeting in the luxurious conference room of the building, he appeared on the construction site with a different posture. He was no longer hunched over under the weight of the bricks nor scrubbing the floor. He wore an impeccable suit, and his presence emanated authority. Next to him was one of the main shareholders of the company, Ricardo Almeida, whom Joaquim had called to attend what was coming. The workers remained silent. Confused. Joaquim, is that you? Asked Francisco, stupefied. Joaquim put a hand on his friend's shoulder and smiled. Yes, Francisco, yes, it is me, but not only as a bricklayer. I am the founder of this company, and today we are going to put things in their place. He entered the meeting room followed by Ricardo, and to everyone's surprise several workers decided to accompany him. The door suddenly opened, interrupting Marcelo, who was in the middle of another of his cruel proposals for cost reduction. All eyes turned to Joaquim. Do you think you are to burst in like that? Snapped Marcelo, getting up in a tone of disdain. I am Joaquim Santos, answered with a firm voice, the founder and largest shareholder of Imperial in general, and I have come here to correct the errors that you have committed in my name. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcelo tried to reply, but Joaquim interrupted him, placing on the table a dossier full of evidence of the abuses and irregularities committed by management. You have turned my company into a place of exploitation and disrespect. Today that ends. Joaquim's revelation hit the meeting room like a bomb. The silence was so intense it seemed as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Marcelo, the interim general manager, was stunned, trying to process what he had just heard. The other executives who minutes before had been laughing and making cold cutback plans were now avoiding Joaquim's gaze. Clearly uncomfortable, Joaquim took a step forward, resting his hands on the long polished wooden table. I founded this company with a clear purpose: to create an environment where hard work is valued, where everyone has dignity. But what I found here on my return disgusts me. You have turned Imperial Engineering into a place of oppression where people like Francisco and Rosa are treated as disposable. That is unacceptable. Marcelo tried to regain his composure. This is absurd. You have no idea how the company works now, Joaquim. The market has changed. We have to be efficient. We cannot allow ourselves to carry the weight of inefficient employees. Joaquim interrupted him in a low but authoritative voice. And do you think that efficiency means dehumanizing those who built this company with their own hands? You talk about efficiency, Marcelo, but what I see are benefits built at the cost of the suffering of honest people. That is not efficiency. It is exploitation. Ricardo Almeida, the shareholder who accompanied Joaquim, finally took the floor. I totally agree with Joaquim. In the council we trusted that the management would maintain the values that Imperial in general has always defended, but it is evident that this trust has been betrayed. From now on the situation will be treated with rigor. The executives began to shift restlessly in their chairs, realizing that the net was closing. Marcelo, however, still tried to defend himself. It is not fair. You cannot come in here and accuse us like that. Joaquim raised his finger, pointing at the general director. I can. And I will do it. I have enough proof of your abusive practices, Marcelo, from the unnecessary cuts to the intimidation that you have perpetrated against the workers today. You will not only be fired, you will have to answer legally for everything you have done here. Joaquim's words were like a direct blow to Marcelo, who lost all the arrogance of minutes ago. He tried to argue, but his voice was weak. You cannot do that. I can, and I have already done it, replied Joaquim, placing a document in front of Marcelo. Here is your letter of resignation. You and everyone else who participated in this toxic system are officially out of Imperial Engineering. Your actions will have consequences, and I will make sure that no one else here suffers for your greed. The other executives, including Patricia, the financial director, and Roberto, in charge of human resources, exchanged nervous glances. We only follow orders, Patricia tried to justify with a trembling voice. Following orders is never an excuse to disrespect people, replied Joaquim, staring at her fixedly. You had options, and you decided to act against the principles on which this company was founded. That will not be ignored either. At that moment Joaquim turned to the workers who had followed him to the meeting room, among them Francisco and Rosa, who observed everything with a mixture of surprise and Esperanza opened her arms and said, you are the heart of this company. It is your hands that build it. Your sweat is what makes everything go forward, and you deserve more than you have been receiving. Rosa took a step forward, still hesitant. Are you really going to change that, Joaquim? It is not one more promise. Joaquim approached her, looking directly at her. My eyes. I have not returned to make empty promises, Rosa. I have returned so that this company can return to what it should have been from the beginning, a place where everyone is respected, valued, and listened to. The workers began to applaud, a timid gesture that soon grew in intensity. The energy in the room changed, completely going from tension to a feeling of relief and renewal. Joaquin knew that this was only the beginning, but he also knew that he had the support of the people who really mattered to make the necessary changes. Before leaving the room, Joaquin looked again at Marcelo, who was now sitting defeated. You thought you could continue like this without consequences. Today you have learned that true power does not come from positions or titles, it comes from integrity and respect, things that you will never understand. Joaquin turned around and, accompanied by the workers, left the meeting room. He knew that he still had a lot of work ahead of him, but he felt that he had taken the first and most important step to recover the soul of the Imperial Inn area. In the days that followed the Great Revelation, the Imperial Inn area was transformed into a true field of renewal. Joaquin, assuming his role as company leader once again, wasted no time and began to implement the changes he had promised. He knew that it was not enough to dismiss those responsible for the toxic environment. The company culture had to be rebuilt from its foundations. One of the first measures was to gather all the workers in a large assembly in the main courtyard of the company. Men and women who had previously avoided looking up were now there, attentively, with a mixture of curiosity and hope in their eyes. Joaquin went up to a small improvised stage. He took the microphone and began to speak with the same sincerity and firmness that have always characterized him. Imperial engineering was born from collective effort. It began with his voice resonating in the space. It was born from the hands of each bricklayer, assistant engineer, and employee who dedicated themselves to building something bigger than all of us. In recent years, this vision has become distorted. I was not there when I was most needed, but today I am here to correct it. The applause erupted, but Joaquin raised his hand, asking for silence. Change will not happen just because I am back. It will happen because we will all work together to ensure that never again will we be treated as numbers or statistics. Each and every one of you are essential to this place, and it will be so from now on. He announced a series of new policies, salary increases for base workers, programs, training and capacity building, and most importantly, the creation of an internal committee made up of employees themselves to ensure their voices are always heard. The news was received with a mix of relief and excitement. For the first time in years, the workers felt they had a leader who truly cared about them. Francisco, the bricklayer who had been humiliated by Marcelo weeks earlier, was called on stage, visibly emotional. He took the microphone and spoke. I have been working here for over 10 years, and I never imagined that one day I would see this happen. Joaquin, I can't thank you enough for giving us back our dignity. Joaquin smiled and replied, Francisco, the thanks are mine. It is the work of people like you that keeps this company afloat. Now it is my turn to make sure I get the respect you deserve. As the changes began to take shape, Joaquin also faced the challenges of dealing with the legal repercussions of the actions of Marcelo and other fired executives. He was determined to collaborate with the investigations, making sure that justice was done and that none of those responsible for exploiting the workers would go unpunished. The following week, Joaquin walked through the halls of the company, no longer disguised, but in his legitimate position as leader. Now the looks were where before there was contempt or indifference, now there was respect and admiration. He greeted all the employees, from Rosa in the kitchen to Kevin in administrative support. Now everyone knew that they were seen and valued. Laura, a newly hired engineer, approached him during a coffee break. Joaquin, can I tell you something? She asked doubtfully. I had never worked in a place where the owner of the company cared so much about people. Thank you for that. Joaquin smiled humbly. I was just trying to correct what should never have been allowed. But true change comes from all of us. Each and every one of you are part of it. As the months went by, Imperial Engineering became a reference not only for its innovative projects but also for its humanized management. Rosa was promoted to kitchen supervisor with an expanded team and better working conditions. Francisco was invited to form part of the internal committee, helping to represent the interests of the workers, and Joaquin continued walking through the halls, never forgetting what he had seen during his days disguised as a bricklayer. Each step was a reminder that leadership is not just about making strategic decisions, but about taking care of the people who make those decisions possible. Joaquin's story was not just about unmasking corruption and greed. It was about bringing humanity back to a place that had forgotten what really mattered. He showed that true power lies not in titles or wealth, but in treating others with respect and dignity. As the sun set over the Imperial Engineering building, Joaquin looked out the window of his office, watching the workers leave with a smile on his face. He knew that there was still a lot to do, but that moment was a symbol that they were on the right path. He promised himself that he would never allow what he had seen in the last few months to happen again. If this story has touched your heart, remember to share it with someone who needs inspiration to fight for what is right. Subscribe to receive more stories of transformation. And don't forget that respect and empathy can change lives, and above all, never underestimate someone for what they appear to be.